The stars burned cold and distant beyond the massive observation windows of Convergence Prime, a diplomatic station that floated in neutral space like a metal island between empires. It was here that the Galactic Coalition held its annual interspecies military summit. And it was here that the galaxy's most powerful warriors gathered to speak of war and peace and everything in between. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, built by 7 different species working together over 3 decades. Its corridors twisted and turned to accommodate beings of all sizes, from the tiny Felth who stood no taller than a human knee to the massive Govan who needed ceilings 20 feet high just to walk upright tonight. The main observation hall buzzed with activity as delegates from across known space mingled and talked and sized each other up. There were the Vrethkai with their gleaming insectoid bodies and wings that clicked when they were nervous or excited. There were the Morvan, crystalline giants whose bodies caught the light and scattered it into rainbows across the walls. There were the reptilian Scarith with their armored scales and proud military bearing. And there were dozens of other species, each one ancient, each one powerful, each one convinced of their own superiority. And then there were the humans humanity had only discovered faster than light travel 40 years ago, which made them infants by galactic standards. Most species in this room had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, some for tens of thousands. They had built empires and watched them fall and built them again while humans were still figuring out how to make fire. So, when the human delegation entered the observation hall, most of the aliens barely glanced their way. What was there to see, after all, but a handful of soft-skinned, short-lived creatures who had barely taken their first steps into the cosmic ocean? The human group was small, just 5 individuals in crisp formal uniforms. At their center walked a woman who moved with quiet confidence through the crowd of towering aliens. She was not tall by human standards, standing just 5 feet and 7 inches. And she was not physically imposing in any obvious way. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her brown eyes swept the room with calm attention. Her name was Gunnery Sergeant Elena Vasquez, and she was 34 years old. She had been a Marine for 16 of those years, and she wore her dress uniform tonight with the kind of ease that came from wearing uniforms most of her adult life. Ribbons and medals decorated her chest in neat rows, each one representing something that the aliens around her could not begin to understand. The Vrethkai diplomat glanced at her as she passed and felt a flicker of curiosity. The human female was so small, so fragile-looking, with her thin skin and her exposed face and her complete lack of natural armor or weapons. How did such creatures survive at all, let alone build starships and travel between worlds? The diplomat clicked his wings in what passed for a shrug among his kind and turned back to his conversation. Humans were a curiosity, nothing more across the room. Commander Thalvex of the Scarith Dominion watched the human delegation with more focused interest. He was old by Scarith standards, nearly 200 years, and he had spent most of those years at war. His scales were dark green, almost black in places, and crisscrossed with scars that told stories of battles fought and won. He stood 8 feet tall and carried himself with the absolute confidence of a predator who had never met anything he could not kill. Thalvex had heard rumors about the humans, whispered stories that seemed too ridiculous to believe, tales of impossible violence and terrifying persistence, stories that painted these soft little creatures as something far more dangerous than they appeared. He did not believe such stories. How could he, when the evidence of his own eyes showed him nothing but fragile beings who would shatter under a single blow from his clawed fist? Still, he was curious enough to want a closer look. He made his way through the crowd, other aliens parting before him out of respect or fear or simple self-preservation. When he reached the human delegation, he stopped and looked down at them with what he hoped was an expression of polite interest rather than obvious contempt. "Welcome to Convergence Prime," he said. his translator device turning his hissing speech into words they could understand. "I am Commander Thalvex of the Scarith Dominion. I do not believe we have been formally introduced." The human males in the group shifted slightly, a movement that Thalvex recognized as protective positioning. But the female at their center simply looked up at him without any sign of fear or discomfort. "Gunnery Sergeant Elena Vasquez," she said, and her voice was calm and steady. "United Earth Marine Corps. It is an honor to meet you, Commander." Thalvex studied her face, searching for signs of the terror that most species showed when confronted with a Scarith warrior. He found nothing but patient attention, as if she were simply waiting to see what he wanted. "How strange," he thought. "How very strange. I have heard interesting things about your species," he said. "They say that humans have a talent for violence that surpasses even the Scarith. I confess I find this difficult to believe." Elena's expression did not change. "We prefer not to think of it as a talent, Commander." "No?" Thalvex tilted his massive head. "Then what would you call it?" "A necessity," she said. "Humans learned a long time ago that the universe does not care whether we live or die. If we wanted to survive, we had to be willing to do whatever survival required. That is not talent. That is just refusing to give up." Thalvex felt his scale shift in what might have been amusement. Such bold words from such a small creature. He found himself almost charmed by her confidence. Misplaced though it surely was. "You speak well, Sergeant Vasquez," he said. "I look forward to learning more about your fascinating species. Perhaps later this evening, you will join me and some of the other military delegates. We have a tradition at these gatherings that I think you might find educational." Elena met his eyes without flinching. "I would be honored, Commander." Thalvex smiled, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth. He had no idea that in just a few hours, he would learn a lesson he would never forget. He had no idea that the small human female standing before him carried memories that would haunt his dreams for years to come tonight. Commander Thalvex would discover why the elder races of the galaxy whispered warnings about humanity tonight. He would learn to be afraid. The private gathering hall was smaller than the main observation deck, but no less impressive. Its walls curved upward into a domed ceiling that displayed a live projection of the stars outside, making it feel as though the assembled warriors sat suspended in the void of space itself. Comfortable seating had been arranged in a rough circle, sized and shaped to accommodate the various body types of the species. Present Elena Vasquez entered the room alongside her fellow human delegates and immediately took stock of her surroundings. It was an old habit, one drilled into her during her first weeks of training and reinforced through years of experience. Always know your exits, always know who is in the room, always be ready for anything. There were perhaps 30 individuals present, representing a dozen different species. She recognized most of them from the intelligence briefing she had studied before the summit. There was Hive Commander Zixther of the Vrethkai, whose compound eyes reflected the starlight in fractured patterns. There was Stone General Korvath of the Morvan, his crystalline body humming with a low frequency that Elena could feel in her chest. And of course there was Commander Thalvex, who had claimed a prominent seat and was watching the humans with barely concealed anticipation. The other humans in Elena's group found seats near the edge of the gathering, but Thalvex gestured for Elena to take a place closer to the center. She accepted without hesitation, settling into a chair clearly designed for a species much larger than herself. Her feet did not quite reach the floor, but her posture remained straight and her expression remained calm. "I am pleased you could join us, Sergeant Vasquez," Thalvex said, his voice carrying easily across the room. "We were just about to begin a tradition that we observe at every summit. It is called the recounting." Elena nodded slowly. "I am not familiar with this tradition, Commander. Perhaps you could explain it to me." Thalvex's teeth gleamed in what passed for a scarred smile. "It is simple. Those of us who have served in military capacities share our accomplishments with one another. Specifically, we share our kill counts. It is a way of measuring honor and prowess, of establishing respect among warriors of different species. Around the room, several aliens shifted in their seats or made sounds of approval. This was clearly a ritual they enjoyed, a chance to boast and compare and establish their place in the hierarchy of warriors. Elena's expression did not change. I see. And participation is expected of all present? It is considered courteous, Vasquez replied. Of course, we understand if a young species like humanity has little to contribute. No one will think less of you if your numbers are modest. The condescension in his voice was thick enough to cut with a knife, but Elena simply nodded. Thank you for explaining, Commander. Please, do not let me delay the proceedings. Vasquez turned to the assembled warriors and raised one clawed hand. Then let us begin. Who wishes to speak first? Commander Zixter rose from his seat, his wings spreading slightly for balance. His voice came through the translator as a series of sharp clicks and buzzes rendered into words. I have served the Vrethkai Collective for 312 years. In that time, I have commanded forces in 7 major conflicts and participated directly in the subjugation of 4 hostile worlds. My personal kill count stands at 312 confirmed eliminations. The kills achieved by forces under my command number approximately 47,000. Murmurs of respect rippled through the room. Zixter inclined his head in acknowledgement and returned to his seat. Stone General Korvath rose next, his crystalline form catching the projected starlight and scattering it across the walls. I have lived for 963 years, he said, his voice resonating like a bell. In that time, I have participated in countless conflicts, though the Morvan do not wage war as frequently as some species. We prefer ritual combat to settle disputes. My personal kill count in formal duels stands at 89. Each one was an honorable death, granted with respect. More murmurs. Though Elena noticed that some of the more aggressive species seemed less impressed by the Morvan's relatively modest numbers one by one, warriors from various species stood and shared their counts. A Felth commander who had led guerrilla campaigns that resulted in thousands of enemy deaths. A Gorvan berserker whose personal count exceeded 500. A silent, shadowy being from a species Elena did not recognize, who simply held up both hands with fingers extended, indicating a count of 20. But the way the other aliens leaned away from this creature suggested those 20 kills had been particularly notable. Finally, Commander Vasquez rose to his feet, and the room fell silent with anticipation. I have served the Scarith Dominion for 187 years, he said, his voice filled with pride. I have led armies across 17 worlds. I have crushed rebellions and conquered civilizations. I have faced enemies in single combat and in massive battles. My personal kill count, confirmed and verified by Dominion records, stands at 1,407. The room erupted in sounds of amazement and respect. 1,400 kills by one warrior's own hand was extraordinary by any standard. Vasquez basked in the admiration for a long moment before slowly turning his gaze toward Elena. And now, he said, his voice dripping with false courtesy, perhaps our human guest would like to participate. Tell us, Sergeant Vasquez, what numbers can your species offer? Surely your mewing conflicts have given you something to count. Every eye in the room turned toward the small human female. Elena could feel the weight of their attention. The expectation of something laughably small. The anticipation of putting these upstart humans in their proper place. She remained seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. Before I answer, Commander, I would like to clarify something. Vasquez waved one clawed hand dismissively. By all means, when you ask for my kill count, Elena said, are you asking for direct kills only, Or are you also asking for confirmed kills by units under my command? The question seemed to catch Thalvax off guard. He blinked his reptilian eyes slowly. I suppose we would be interested in hearing both numbers, if you have them, Elena nodded. And should I also include confirmed enemy casualties during campaigns where I served as a strategic coordinator, even if I was not directly commanding the units involved? The room had gone very quiet. Something in the human's tone had shifted the atmosphere in a way that the assembled warriors could not quite identify. Thalvav's S-scales rippled with uncertainty. Yes, he said slowly. Tell us everything. Elena Vasquez took a slow breath, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of something terrible. Very well, Commander. I will give you my numbers. The silence in the room was absolute as Elena Vasquez began to speak. Every alien present had stopped moving, stopped breathing, stopped thinking about anything except the small human female who sat among them with her hands folded calmly in her lap. Direct kills, she said, and her voice was steady and flat, empty of pride or boasting or any emotion at all. By my hand, my rifle, my blade, in close combat and at range across multiple theaters of operation. 238 confirmed. A ripple of reaction passed through the room. Some of the aliens seemed relieved, others mildly impressed. 238 was respectable for such a young and fragile species. Though hardly remarkable compared to the numbers that had been shared already, Commander Thalvex allowed himself a small smile. Perhaps the humans were not entirely pathetic after all, but they were certainly nothing to be concerned about then. Elena continued speaking. Confirmed kills by fire teams under my direct command during joint operations, she said, including ground engagements on Proxima Station, the urban combat operations during the Jakarta Uprising, and the tunnel clearance campaigns on Mars Colony 7. 4,612. The smile froze on Thalvex's face. Around the room, aliens exchanged uncertain glances. That number was significantly larger than expected, but perhaps it could be explained. Human pack tactics, perhaps. Or particularly efficient subordinates. Elena was not finished. Confirmed enemy casualties during campaigns where I served as strategic coordinator or tactical advisor, she said. And now her voice had taken on a distant quality, as if she were reading from a list that existed only in her memory, including the Second Orbital War, the Kepler Belt Insurgency, and the Western Hemisphere Pacification. Approximately 93,000. The room went dead silent somewhere. Someone dropped a drinking vessel. It hit the floor with a crash that seemed impossibly loud in the stillness, but no one moved to pick it up. No one moved at all. Thalvex's S-scales had gone pale, shifting from dark green to a sickly gray color that Elena did not recognize. His mouth opened and closed several times before he managed to speak. 93, he whispered. 93,000? Approximately, Elena confirmed. Exact figures are difficult to verify in large-scale engagements. Some estimates place the number higher, but I prefer to use conservative calculations. Hive Commander Zixter's wings were clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among the Vrethkai. This cannot be correct, he said. You are young. Your species is young. How can such numbers be possible? Elena turned to look at him, and something in her eyes made the ancient insectoid warrior take an involuntary step backward. Those figures do not include the siege of Helion 4, she said. Casualty estimates from that operation were considered unreliable due to the scale of the fighting. Official records list the number as unknown, but internal assessments suggest somewhere between 50 and 70,000 enemy combatants were eliminated over the 3-week engagement. The Morvan Stone general made a sound like a cracked bell. 3 weeks, he repeated. 50 to 70,000 in 3 weeks? It was an intense operation, Elena said simply. Tholvex had found his voice again. though it emerged as little more than a croak. You said those figures did not include Helion-4. Are there other operations you have not mentioned? Elena was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost gentle, as if she were trying not to cause more distress than necessary. During the Kethra incursion, I served as part of the tactical command structure for the 7th Fleet, she said. Our mission was to intercept and neutralize Kethra colony ships that were approaching human-controlled space. Over the course of 14 months, we intercepted 3 such vessels. She paused, and the pause stretched into something that felt like forever. Each colony ship carried approximately 200,000 Kethras individuals, she continued. The ships were destroyed with all hands. Those figures were classified and were not included in my previous count, 600,000. The number hung in the air like a physical weight, pressing down on everyone present. A Felth commander near the back of the room made a small, choked sound and quietly left. No one tried to stop him. No one blamed him. Thulvex stared at the human female as if seeing her for the first time. This small, soft, fragile creature who sat among them without weapons or armor, who had to look up to meet his eyes, who weighed perhaps 1/10 of what he weighed. This creature had participated in the deaths of nearly 800,000 sentient beings, and she was only 34 years old. How? He managed to say. How is this possible? Your species has only been among the stars for 40 years. How can you have accumulated such numbers in so short a time? Elena met his gaze without flinching. Commander, humans have been killing each other for as long as we have existed. We did not stop when we reached the stars. We simply found new places to fight and new reasons to die. The Vrethkai Hive commander stepped forward, his compound eyes reflecting the projected starlight in fractured patterns. The Kethra, he said. I have heard that name. They were a spacefaring species that inhabited the region now controlled by humanity. What happened to them? Elena's expression did not change. They attempted to use human colonies as a food source, she said. They killed and consumed approximately 12,000 human civilians before we responded. And your response? The Hive commander asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer and wished he did not. The Kethra no longer exist, Elena said. Their homeworld is an irradiated wasteland. Their colony ships have been destroyed. Their species has been erased from the galaxy. She said it simply, without pride or shame, as if she were describing the weather or the color of the walls. It was just a fact, just something that had happened. The Kethra had threatened humanity. And now the Kethra were gone. Forverstone General Korvath's crystalline body had dimmed, the light within him fading to a dull glow. Genocide, he said, and the word came out as a horrified whisper. You committed genocide. We committed survival, Elena replied. The Kethra made it clear that coexistence was impossible. They saw us as prey, as food, as things to be consumed. We disagreed. She looked around the room at the assembled warriors. These ancient beings who had lived for centuries, who had conquered worlds and commanded armies, who had thought themselves the masters of warfare. Humans do not start fights, she said quietly. But we finished them. We finished them completely. We finished them so thoroughly that no one will ever try the same thing again. The room remained silent. No one seemed to know what to say. No one seemed to know what to think. Commander Thalvex slowly sank back into his seat, his scale still that sickly gray color. He had wanted to put the humans in their place, to demonstrate their insignificance compared to the elder races of the galaxy. Instead, he had learned something that would haunt him for the rest of his very long life. The humans were not insignificant. The humans were terrifying. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Warriors who had faced death countless times sat frozen in their seats, unable to process what they had just heard. The projected stars continued to wheel slowly overhead, indifferent to the revelation that had shaken the room to its foundation finally. A young Morvan diplomat who had been observing from the edge of the gathering found the courage to speak. His crystalline form pulsed with nervous light as he stepped forward. "I do not understand," he said, and his voice trembled slightly. "Humans live for less than a century. Your species has only possessed faster-than-light travel for 40 years. How can one individual have accumulated such numbers? How can your people have accomplished such destruction in so short a time?" Elena turned to face him, and the young diplomat nearly stepped back at the weight he saw in her eyes. Those were not the eyes of a creature who had lived for only 34 years. Those were eyes that had seen too much, done too much, carried burdens that no being should have to carry. "Let me tell you about humanity," she said, and her voice was quiet but carried clearly through the silent room. "Let me tell you what we are and how we came to be this way." She stood, and though she remained small among the towering aliens, somehow the room seemed to shrink around her. "Humans evolved on a world called Earth," she began. "It is a beautiful world in many ways, but it is also a harsh one. Our planet is covered with predators that wanted to eat us, parasites that wanted to infest us, diseases that wanted to kill us. We had no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no armor. We were soft and weak and slow compared to the creatures that hunted us." She began to pace slowly, her footsteps echoing in the silence. "So we learned to adapt. We learned to think. We learned to work together. And most importantly, we learned to fight. Not with our bodies, which were inadequate, but with our minds, which proved to be the most dangerous weapons the galaxy has ever seen." The Vrethkai Hive commander tilted his head. "Many species evolved through similar pressures. This does not explain your capacity for violence." "You are right," Elena acknowledged. "What makes humans different is what came after. You see, once we became the dominant species on our planet, once we eliminated or controlled all the predators that threatened us, we did not stop fighting." She paused, letting the words sink in. "We fought each other." Dalvek stirred in his seat. "Many species have internal conflicts," he said. "The Scarith certainly do. With respect, Commander, your conflicts are nothing like ours," Elena replied. "Humans have been at war with ourselves for our entire recorded history. We have developed countless weapons specifically designed to kill other humans. We have refined the art of killing to a degree that no other species has ever approached." She turned to face the room fully, her gaze sweeping across the assembled warriors. "In the century before we achieved faster-than-light travel, humans fought 2 wars that spanned our entire planet. The first killed approximately 40 million of our own kind. The second killed approximately 85 million. And those were just the largest conflicts. There were hundreds of smaller wars, rebellions, uprisings, and ethnic cleansings occurring simultaneously. Stone General Korvath made a sound of pure horror. "You killed 125 million of your own species in a single century? Closer to 200 million, if you include indirect deaths from famine and disease caused by the conflicts," Elena corrected. "And that was before we had nuclear weapons, orbital bombardment capabilities, or biological warfare agents." The room seemed to grow colder. Though the temperature had not changed, when humanity reached the stars, we did not leave our violence behind. We brought it with us. The Unification Wars lasted for 30 years and killed approximately 15 million humans. The corporate rebellions killed another 8 million. The Outer Colony Purges killed somewhere between 5 and 12 million, depending on which records you believe. Elena stopped pacing and stood still in the center of the room. "In the 40 years since we achieved faster-than-light travel, humans have killed more of our own kind than the entire population of many of your homeworlds. And we did this while simultaneously expanding into new star systems, building colonies, and developing technologies that rival species, who have had thousands of years to advance. The Felth who had remained in the room, despite his obvious terror, spoke up in a small voice. How do your soldiers keep fighting with such losses? How does your species not collapse under the weight of such death? Elena looked at him with something that might have been sadness. Because humans are built to endure, she said. Our bodies can take damage that would kill most species and keep functioning. We can fight for days without sleep. We can ignore pain that would incapacitate others. We can watch our friends die beside us and keep moving forward. We can carry the memories of everyone we have killed and everyone we have lost and still wake up the next morning ready to do it again. She raised one hand and looked at it, turning it slowly in the light. These hands have taken 238 lives directly, she said. I remember every single one. I remember their faces, their sounds, the way they fell. I carry them with me always. And if I am ordered to do so, I will add more to that number tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day until I die or someone manages to kill me. Her hand dropped to her side. That is what humans are, Commander Thalvex. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest or the most intelligent or the longest lived. But we are the most persistent. We are the most adaptable. And when it comes to violence, we have had more practice than any other species in existence. Thalvex finally found his voice. The elder races, he said slowly. They warned us about humanity. I thought they were exaggerating. I thought they were simply intimidated by a new species on the galactic stage. They were not exaggerating, Elena said. When humanity first made contact with the broader galaxy, we were evaluated by the Council of Elders. They reviewed our history, our biology, our psychology. Do you know what conclusion they reached? No one answered. No one seemed capable of speaking. They classified humanity as a Class 7 existential threat, Elena continued. The highest classification in their system. The same classification given to artificial intelligence outbreaks, galaxy-consuming parasites, and stellar-scale weapons. They did not give us a seat on the Galactic Coalition because they wanted to welcome us into the community of spacefaring peoples. She looked around the room one final time. They gave us a seat because they were terrified of what we would do if they tried to keep us out. The truth hung in the air. Undeniable and inescapable. Humanity had not been welcomed into the galaxy. Humanity had been feared into it. The gathering dissolved shortly after Elena finished speaking. Warriors who had entered the room full of pride and confidence left in silence. Their certainty shattered. Their understanding of the galaxy fundamentally altered. Some walked quickly, eager to escape the presence of the small human female who had revealed truths they wished they had never learned. Others moved slowly, as if in a daze, still trying to process what they had heard. Elena did not immediately return to the human delegation quarters. Instead, she made her way to one of the smaller observation decks on the station, a quiet space where she could be alone with her thoughts and the endless sea of stars. She stood at the viewing window with her hands clasped behind her back, watching distant suns burn in the darkness. A reflection stared back at her from the glass, a ghostly image superimposed on the cosmos. She did not know how long she stood there before she heard footsteps approaching. Heavy footsteps, the kind made by someone much larger than a human. Commander Thalvex stopped a respectful distance away. And for a long moment, neither of them spoke. I came to apologize, the Scarith finally said. And his voice was different now, stripped of its earlier arrogance and condescension. I invited you to that gathering expecting to humiliate you. I wanted to demonstrate the insignificance of your species compared to the elder races. I was cruel and I was foolish. Elena did not turn to face him. You were not foolish, Commander. You simply did not have complete information. Most species look at humans and see something small and fragile and young. You saw what you were expected to see. I saw what I wanted to see, Thalvex corrected. There is a difference. Elena nodded slowly, acknowledging the distinction. The labs moved closer, coming to stand beside her at the window. From this angle, the difference in their sizes was even more apparent. He towered over her like a mountain beside a hill. May I ask you something? He said. You may ask. I cannot promise I will answer. Those numbers you shared, Thalvex said slowly. The lives you have taken, the destruction you have participated in. How do you live with it? How do you wake up each morning carrying such weight? Elena was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than Thalvex had heard it all evening. I do not count them to boast, she said. I have never spoken those numbers aloud before tonight. I count them because I refuse to forget. Every single number represents a life that ended because of choices I made, actions I took, orders I gave. They were enemies, yes, but they were also people. They had names and families and hopes and fears. They were alive, and now they are not, and I am the reason why. She turned to face him, and Thalvex saw something in her eyes that he had never seen in a warrior before. It was not pride. It was not bloodlust or satisfaction, or even the cold efficiency of a professional killer. It was sorrow. Deep, profound, endless sorrow. I carry them with me always, Elena continued. Every face, every scream, every moment of light leaving their eyes. I carry the weight of what I have done because that weight is the price of survival. If I ever stop feeling it, if I ever become numb to what taking a life means, then I have become something worse than a killer. I have become a monster. Thalvex stared at her, this small human female who had killed more beings than he had met in his entire long life. He had expected her to be cold, to be empty, to be a machine built for destruction instead. She was the opposite. She felt everything. She remembered everything. She carried the full horror of her actions in her heart every single day, and she did it anyway. I do not understand, he admitted. How can you feel such pain and continue to fight? How can you bear such weight and still pick up a weapon? Elena turned back to the stars. Because that is what humans are, Commander. We are not dangerous because we are unfeeling. We are dangerous because we feel everything, every loss, every death, every tragedy, and we fight anyway. We grieve and we mourn and we carry scars that never heal. And when morning comes, we get up and we keep going. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. That is the terrible secret of humanity. We are not warriors without fear or pain. We are warriors because of our fear and pain. We fight for the people we love, for the homes we build, for the futures we want to see. We fight because we know exactly what we are sacrificing, and we have decided that some things are worth any price. Thalvex felt something shift inside himself. Some fundamental understanding clicking into place. He had lived for nearly 200 years. He had fought in countless battles and led armies across 17 worlds. He had thought he understood what it meant to be a warrior. He had understood nothing. I will be sending a message to the Scarith High Command, he said quietly. I will recommend an immediate revision of all strategic assessments regarding human military capability. What classification will you recommend? Elena asked. Thalvex considered the question carefully. The Scarith used a threat classification system similar to the one the Council of Elders used. The highest level was reserved for existential threats, dangers that could potentially destroy the Dominion itself. Existential priority, he said finally. The highest level. Elena nodded slowly. Your leaders will not like that recommendation. No, Thalvex agreed. They will not. But they need to hear it. They need to understand that humanity is not a species to be trifled with. Not a young civilization to be manipulated or conquered or dismissed. He turned to face her fully. lowering his massive head in a gesture of respect that he had never offered to anyone outside his own species. "I came here tonight expecting to teach you a lesson about your place in the galaxy," he said. "Instead, you have taught me something far more valuable. I am grateful, Sergeant Vasquez, and I am humbled." Elena inclined her head in acknowledgement. "Safe travels, Commander Thalvex. May your wars be few and your victories be swift." The Scarith warrior departed. Leaving Elena alone with the stars once more, she remained at the window for a long time, watching the distant lights burn in the darkness. Somewhere out there were the ruins of worlds humanity had destroyed, the graves of species humanity had erased, the evidence of what her kind was capable of when pushed to the edge. She did not regret what humanity had done. The Kethra had given them no choice. The enemies they had fought had threatened everything humans held dear, but she mourned it. She mourned every life taken, every family broken, every future that would never be. She mourned the innocence that humanity had lost long before they ever reached the stars. And tomorrow, she would wake up and put on her uniform and be ready to do it all again if necessary. Because that was what it meant to be human. That was the terrible, beautiful, heartbreaking truth of her species. They felt everything, they remembered everything, and they kept fighting anyway miles away. In the Scarith delegation quarters, Commander Thalvex finished composing his message to High Command. He read it over one final time before sending it. The message was simple. Recommend immediate revision of all strategic assessments regarding human military capability. Classification: existential priority. Do not underestimate them. Do not provoke them. Do not under any circumstances make them our enemy. They are small and fragile and short-lived, and they are the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever produced. They do not fight despite their pain. They fight because of it. And they will never, ever stop. He sent the message and turned to look out his own window at the same stars Elena was watching. Somewhere out there, humanity was building, growing, spreading across the galaxy like a force of nature, and for the first time in his very long life, Commander Thalvex of the Scarith Dominion understood what it truly meant to be afraid.